Up, Dungeon Masters, your players are falling asleep at the table. What, your wizard is going to use catapult to throw rocks at a monster again? How about instead of that, the wizard covers their body in rocks and hurls themselves? Now you're thinking like a badass using Battlezoo Bestiary, Elemental Storm. Filled with over 150 innovative elemental monsters, new elemental spells, and the monster parts system, allowing you to craft weapons, armor, and magic items from the creatures you slay, infusing elemental magic into them with 20 unique elements. Sure, there's classics like air, earth, fire, and water, but there's even weirder elements like music, space, and time. Doctor Who, Doctor You.
Wait, I'm a player, not a dungeon master. Why should I give a shit?
Well, Yahtzee, how about a brand new character archetype, the Monster Hunter? Climb on creatures, target specific body parts, and weaken them. Or just grab a small monster and use their attacks against the big one.
Ooh, you sold me at big ones.
Best of all, this archetype can fit along any class. Fighter Monster Hunter? Duh. Monk Monster Hunter? Sure. Wizard Monster Hunter? Well, it'll set the difficulty up, but go right ahead. Elemental Storm is filled with over 250 pages packed with stunning illustrations, detailed rules on the monster parts system, and so much more for your Pathfinder 2e and D&D 5th edition games. Click on the link below or head on over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com to secure your copy of Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm today, and turn your table from slow and crunchy to fast and furious.
We're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roll for Combat Live.
Hello, hello.
So we are back once again. You have no D&D. You see, normally, every week I invite Anto onto the show, and every week he has a game Wednesday night.
Yep.
So every week he can't join us. But when he has a Kickstarter, he's like, oh, I can join.
Yeah, I was like, sorry, guys, gonna have to cancel D&D this week. Got work.
That's right.
They were furious because the only time we don't play is when I cancel. So when I was like, we're not playing this week.
Oh, wait, did you really cancel?
Yeah. I was like, I got to do work stuff.
Oh, man, now I feel bad.
I'm launching this Kickstarter. I got to go be an internet minstrel and peddle my wares. And they were furious. They were like, we should just be playing D&D.
Oops. Well, we could have done it a different
joked,
day.
but he was right, and now he feels bad.
Uh-oh.
No, it's all good.
Well, they can't play ever. I don't know. Like, my group, we played yesterday, or no, Monday. It was the first time we played in like a month. Like, I don't know. My group, we know, like, things happen.
This is not like Anto's group. Anto's group is like clockwork, Steven. They basically never miss. It is actually, there are a lot of impressive things about Anto. That's actually his most impressive feature, is how consistent his groups are. I have no idea how he does it. Maybe we should have done an episode about that, because people want to know how to get their groups to meet that regularly.
The trick is you run your group like a dictator, and you're like, we are playing. I don't care whether you've got things going on. Like, Wednesday night is D&D night. You change your life around this night.
Well, yeah, I can't do that. Well, the thing is also, we used to play, we used to have like 3 or 4 days a week that were free, so we would have like our main day and the backups.
Yeah.
But now everyone only has one day, and that's Monday. And quite frankly, whenever there's a holiday, then we don't do a holiday, and people are traveling. So Monday is almost always good, except for a holiday or sometimes in the summer, because then people come back from like, Monday. They come back like either Monday night or, stuff like that. But
Wednesday is the least likely to be a holiday. And it sounds like Endo doesn't care. Is it a holiday? Doesn't matter. Your wedding doesn't matter. Your own funeral, get out of the casket, come back to the table.
We've played on birthdays. We've played on anniversaries.
Yeah, we play on those. We don't play when people are away. Like, one of our guys was in Italy, so we didn't play. Like, I was away, so, I was in Gen Con, we didn't play, things like that. So
yeah, if I'm not there, we obviously don't run. But we have 5 players, I think. So as long as 3 of the players and me are there, we will run. And we will find either a one-shot to do, or find an excuse for the absent characters to be tagging along, or absent. Like, I try wherever possible to make sure that we keep up the habit of play, because I know how easy it is to fall out of the habit of playing every week.
Yeah.
We have 7 players in my group. And not only that, but one of them is Linda. So if I'm available, she's pretty much always available. And if we have 4, I'll run. And I still don't run like 3 out of every 4, maybe 4 out of every 5 weeks, because we can't even get 3 additional people out of 6, 50-50. So I still think that's pretty darn good.
I'll have to give all of the players a gold sticker. Like a point of inspiration.
So you have a Kickstarter. I have a Kickstarter. We all have Kickstarter. Everyone has a Kickstarter.
We're all doing it.
Foundry has one too.
I know. I put it up, and it's half Foundry, half what was the other? It's half Foundry, half
Robot.
Yeah, Rogue. No, who is it? No, it's I forgot who's doing the book, the hardcover book. But anyhow, so yeah, we have a Mage Hand Press. They're doing the hardcover. So everyone has one, and then JP Probst, he's doing his next in like 2 weeks. So everyone has one. I guess this is the month to do it, because you can't always do it during the summer, I think. So
like August, you have Gen Con.
What? You're both are talking at the same time. What were you saying?
No, I wanted to hear what you were saying.
I was going to say, I think a lot more people would have done in August if it wasn't for the Cosmere.
Well, that's what happened. We were going to
got pushed back.
Yeah, I was going to do mine.
I was going to say the same thing. August, you have Gen Con, and then you have the Cosmere.
Yep.
And then that was it. And so now September is everybody who decided not to do it during the Cosmere comes out, just like after the rain, when a bunch of different creatures that had like gone underground to hide come up out of the soil.
Well, it's not so bad. Actually, I don't think it sucked. I don't think it would have sucked as much oxygen out of the room as people think, but whatever, live and learn. So anyhow, so tell us a little bit about what is it you do? Because you put out adventures, you put out books, you put out all these things, but your thing is like you put out a monthly magazine.
I do indeed.
That has adventure stuff.
I put out SideQuest, which is my monthly digital magazine. Put that out every month. I've been doing it for 3 years now, and every year, so every 12 issues, get together, run a Kickstarter to bundle 12 of the issues together and put them into a hardback book, because the logistics of trying to print such a short zine and then send it all around the world just have never made sense at the scale that I'm doing it at. Yeah, I've always wanted to do printed versions of all the things that I wanted to do since the very first issue, but it just never made sense to do it issue by issue. So the annuals are the way for people that want to get the content in physical form to get a hold of it. And we're doing the third annual this month on Kickstarter, so it's issues 25 to 36, so it's a 148-page book, and it's packed with all of the stuff that's been in the last year's worth of magazines. So it's monsters, magic items, player options, adventure type stuff, factions. It's the smorgasbord of content that you could want, whether you're a player or a dungeon master for 5e.
So do you actually change it when it goes to the hardcover? I have yours right here. I have SideQuest right here. SideQuest 1.
Yes. So the content in SideQuest 1 and 2 was broadly the same, going in from the digital copies into the hardback. A little bit of editing to make it fit into the physical format, especially with the first annual, because the first 6 or 7 issues were formatted for A4, and then the physical book is US letter, so there was a lot of physical shuffling around to get it to match the pagination. But this year, because for a lot of 2023 going into 2024, I was ill a lot. So a lot of content never made it onto the kind of digital Patreon side of things. Last year, there was a lot of content that I wanted to put out, but never made it. So a lot of that is making it back into the book this time. So this is the first time that there's going to be a bunch of brand new content or kind of altered content going into the book that wasn't on Patreon originally.
Actually, so your book, by the way, is how I got the idea for Year of Monsters. And
Oh,
and compiling it. Well, because we do something similar where we put out a monthly new ancestry or species, if you're probably aware. And then I was like, I'll do the same thing, and then we compiled it and came out with this, and I even have a special cover like you, classic creatures. So
it just makes, when you're putting out monthly content, it just makes sense to bundle it into like annualized content. I mean, it's something that so many other industries have been doing for decades. You know, comics and
well, but we're stupid because we add new things to it. So.
I mean, it's the Roll for Combat and Stephen Glicker way, though. I think that the fans love you for the fact that you add additional things, sometimes just for fun, or even after it's already funded and everything's in, and you've told them what they're going to get, and they know. You'll just be like, no, let's add these two things as well that we didn't even say. Just that people open it. And the look of delight when it's like it delivered everything that we said and then other things that they didn't even know they were going to get.
Yeah, I think I'm just stupid.
You just want to make something awesome that people will love.
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? Making it so that the people that are consuming the stuff that we make enjoy it and have as fun a time as possible.
Yeah. And look, my life would be easier if you didn't keep adding those extra things, because then I could move on to the next project and we wouldn't spend more time on each project. But I still really appreciate how awesome it is once it is done that we have all those cool things in it.
So tell me how you do. So what is, I am curious because like we do, so you have an adventure in here. You have characters, maps, adventures, sometimes some, let's see here. We see locations, 2 entirely new classes, subclasses, monsters, templates, factions, adventures, magic items, feats, spells. Like, the way we do it is I template everything. So, like, it's not so bad because we come out with, like, a new species every month. Or we'll come out with a new monster book every other year. Or now we're doing dragons. But that's heavily templated. Like, I have to have it very organized. I kind of use a magazine format is actually what we use, more of a where it's like I actually came from a newspaper background and where we had like, you know, there would be columns and that was the equivalent of like templated articles, and then you would have your news, which would be random. So it's sort of the same thing where you can prepare like 60-70% of the stuff ahead of time, and then the other like 30-40 is wild card. So how on earth do you organize this? Because this seems like a nightmare. Because it's like you're not consistent.
No, it's not consistent, and that is part of what makes it a nightmare on my end from the production side. But it's part of what I think is the appeal of it from the customer point of view, because you get that smorgasbord of stuff. You know, I grew up on the monthly gamer magazines like White Dwarf and Dragon and Dungeon, and one of my kind of defining memories of those magazines was no matter what system they were talking about, no matter what game they were talking about in a particular monthly issue, I always came away from them feeling inspired and feeling like I could take what I'd just read about in those articles and apply it to either the game I was running at the minute, or in the case of White Dwarf, which was a lot of wargaming stuff, apply it to the armies I was building and stuff like that. And that was one of the driving forces behind me starting the magazine, is I wanted something that had a nice wide selection of stuff so that people could get that inspiration, even if they didn't know that they wanted it, so that they come into each issue and are like, oh, this is a surprise.
Still, it's like, you don't write everything. I mean, I saw you have writers, so I was like, I mean, you do enough. I know you do the layout, and you obviously do art direction, and you do some of the maps, but it looks like at least you have writers, so you don't do everything.
So I do have a suite of writers, a suite of artists. I also do a lot of the writing as well. So in any given issue, I'm probably writing 50 to 75% of it, and then the rest is taken care of by a group of freelancers. That depends very much month to month, largely depending on what the topic of the month is, and also, especially in the last year, like I said, I've had a lot of like health problems in the last year, so I burned through a lot of my backlog. I'd been building up a lot of kind of backlog of written content to use, and then like tail end of 2023 when I was in hospital, I had no choice but to just use all that because I couldn't do any other writing. So once I'd been through that, the last like 5 or 6 months, I've pretty much just done all of the writing myself. So there are months where I'm doing all the writing and all the layout. So it is, some months it is a lot. Other months it's not too bad if I've got articles from writers and stuff to plug in. Over time, I have gotten more templated with it. So that's one of the kind of things that you learn as you go along, is having those templates and having kind of a standard format for things makes things much easier. So with monsters, as a really easy example, my new kind of approach for monsters is much more rigid in its template. As a lot more set tables for how things appear, and then the stats, and it's much easier to plug in the information for the monsters than it's ever been before, which makes it easier for me, and it also makes it easier to communicate that to the freelancers that I work with. But then you get some articles where it's just like, I will have an idea 3 days before the publication date, and I'm like, that's what I'm going with, because this, it has to be written down. And that's always the way that I've written my entire life. So I went to university to do writing. I've been a professional writer for most of my professional life, and that's how I've done a lot of my work. Is sometimes it will get irresponsibly close to the deadline, and I'll be like, I've had an idea, and this idea is the thing that needs to come out of me. And then it's putting the candle at both ends for like 72 hours.
So I'm looking here, like, what do you decide what to put in? Because it's like kind of sometimes all over the place. It's like, yeah, it's like you really, do you actually go backwards? I know some people go backwards and they find art, and then they write based on the art they find.
Sometimes it's art-based. Sometimes it will be a case of, I know that this particular book is coming out from WoTC. So around the time, I can't remember the specific book. Let's just say Fizzbands, for lack of a better example. I know a dragon book is coming out. So to coincide with that month, I'll want to do something relating to dragons. And I'll note it down in my content calendar. We're going to have something dragon related. Or October time, always a good time for Halloween. I know I want particularly spooky monsters. I know I want Halloween themed things. Like, that's why in annual 1, that's why the witch class is in what was the October issue for that month. That's why the monster in that issue is more of a spooky themed monster, and things like that. And then other times it is a case of, I have had a specific idea and I just got to get it out.
So you have a Kraken Cove.
The idea versus the issue.
I see you have Kraken Cove. You could have done that during the year of Kraken, or the month of Kraken, or whatever that Kraken. The Kraken week.
You had it too big both times.
For the year, the month, the week, the day.
The Kraken Cove, I think, was published like 2 years before Kraken Week was a thing.
You can still return to Kraken Cove.
Yeah, the return to Kraken Cove.
Yeah.
That would have required knowing Kraken Week was coming. I didn't know Kraken Week was coming until a couple days before it started.
Yeah. Well, now
year,
you know.
Though,
yeah, next year it's the same week.
We've got it penciled in for the calendar. Next year we can do Kraken Week.
So there you go.
Return to Kraken Cove.
Yeah, return. Yeah, there you go. You could do the return. So you only do, because you were dabbling in Pathfinder, but then you gave it up, and now you're back to 5e.
That is correct.
Only five. No, you had no desire to try Pathfinder. It would have been interesting if you did.
So I had Pathfinder content in the digital format for several months, and I ran into a couple of different issues with it. So one of the problems is I actually saw my patrons just dropping off after introducing Pathfinder content, because I assumed that it was because it's splitting the focus, and instead of just being all D&D, it was D&D and some Pathfinder. So the people that were there for just D&D were getting some stuff that they weren't interested in as well. So the churn rate increased. But then also I was finding that writing content and making it fit for two systems was not nearly as fun for me as just writing for one system and actually designing to fit in for the strengths of a system. Like having to, like monsters, for example, having to massage a monster to fit into two different systems just wasn't enjoyable for me.
Well, it's hard to do too, as we know, because we go backwards though, because we do Pathfinder then convert to 5e.
Yeah.
And that turns out to be a lot easier to do, because almost anything you can do in Pathfinder is likely to be able to convert to 5e without too much trouble. But there are a few things in 5e, especially if they're monsters tied to adventures, because I've done this before for DM Layer, where I did 5e to Pathfinder, where it's quite a bit more effort. And I know people who do even more conversions than me in both directions, and they where you're going to hire them to do the conversion, they charge more by a significant amount to convert from 5e to Pathfinder, because oftentimes you have to rebuild it and just kind of reimagine it than from Pathfinder to 5e.
Yeah. And what I was finding is, especially given that with year 3, as I was saying, a lot, unlike the previous years, this time I've gone and expanded a lot of the content, because after coming out of being so poorly for so long, I've had the energy to do that. A lot of the monsters that had previously been pulling double duty for 5e and PF2 in the kind of initial run of digital, now that I'm sort of republishing them in the physical book and I'm only thinking about them in the 5e space, I think that they are much stronger monsters because of it, as I'm going back over them, thinking, like, relooking at their abilities and retweaking them and retesting them. It is resulting in much stronger monsters because I'm only occupied with the one system and not having to pull double duty.
So you put this out, this is through your Patreon, right? Is where you put this out. So that's how people can get it. But then obviously the Kickstarter, I mean, I like the book. I was so impressed with the quality. I asked him how and where he printed it. And because I was like, wow, damn. Because you do print on demand, and this is like,
the version that you've got and the version that's on Kickstarter are not the print on demand versions.
Oh, okay.
Specifically because the print on demand that comes from DriveThruRPG, I say this all the time, is terrible.
Oh no, that's atrocious. Because people ask me why we don't do print on demand, and I'm like, you don't want me to do print on demand. Yeah, you don't.
The only reason that I offer print on demand through DriveThruRPG is purely from an accessibility standpoint, because I know that there are people who the shipping costs to get it from here in the UK to wherever they live in the world, it is prohibitive for them. And I want them to be able to get it printed in their location and get their hands on it somehow. Otherwise, I wouldn't offer it in print on demand through DriveThruRPG, because I really am not satisfied with the quality that comes out in comparison to getting it printed in almost any other circumstance. But that's part of the reason why I go to Kickstarter, to be able to do the print runs for the much nicer books, because it's just such a step above the print on demand. It's night and day difference.
No, well, yeah. I mean, although I fooled around with some print on demand recently, and it's getting better. The thing with print on demand is once you go above about 50, 100 books, it's just not worth it. It's just, I mean, if you're going to print more than 100 books, then just, print it. Simple as that. So, But yeah, no, you got yours, and it looks really good. And this is it. Just side quests for the rest of your life.
Probably not for the rest of my life.
The rest of your life.
It's one of those things. I think that anytime that you're making monthly content, you always have to be aware of either you do have to do this for the rest of your life, or you have to be aware that at some point you've got to get off the treadmill. And I think there's probably one more year of side quest left in me. So I think we'll probably do a year 4 and then switch it up to something else, depending on how a lot of the things that I want to do next year go. Like I really want to get into short module publishing. It's something that I want to try next year. So little 32-page, like the classic style adventure modules, and try those out specifically in print, almost certainly through Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding platform, and see how that goes. And if that goes well, at least to my standards, then I imagine I'll move more into that region, and then the big books will be more like the kind of stuff that is in SideQuest, but not necessarily keeping it as the collation of monthly zines, because you also run into the problem of eventually, like, who's going to back SideQuest 12 when they've not got the first 11, and every one you add is going to add this perception for people that they have to have all the ones before it, because you add a sequential number into something. Part of the monkey brain is like, I need the ones before this.
Yeah. That's why you make them available in the Kickstarter.
Well, you can also do it themed. Like you were talking about certain themes where instead of a number, they have a theme. Like Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm is not Battlezoo Bestiary 3. It's Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. If you want elementals, get that one. If you don't, you skip it, and you can just take the themes.
That's a trick. You don't use numbers. So sometimes you do, like, but in marketing, I learned all that. Is that how the numbers are sometimes good, but sometimes bad. If it forces people, it gives them FOMO. So
yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that I am aware of, and it's not going to be a case of SideQuest every year for the rest of my life.
I was kidding.
I was kidding. No, but it is a legitimate question, especially when I, as an entity and as a company, I come into a crowdfunding platform and asking people for their money. It's entirely reasonable for people to ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah. Well, also, if you enjoy, so we did the Year of Monsters, and then now we did the Year of Legends. Now we're doing Year of Titans. I mean, I don't know about you, Mark, but I really enjoy it. Like, that's the thing. It's like I like it. It's fun. So it's, to me, it's not even really. I mean, it's work, but it's not tough work. As I like to joke, it's like we're not in the coal mine here. It's it's but it's enjoyable. Coming out with these monthly ancestries. So it's a lot of fun.
The job that we do, like, even though we are privileged enough to get to do this and earn a living for it, we're not in it for the money. If we were just in it, if we were just concerned about money, we would do almost any other job. It's one of those situations. We do this kind of stuff because we enjoy it.
I don't know if I completely agree with that, but sure, I enjoy it, but have to still make a living.
there are a lot of other jobs that would make more.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
For the same amount of effort. That's what Anto means.
Yeah,
not saying you're not going to get any money.
I mean, for the skills that we have and deploy doing this job, and for the amount of effort and work that it takes, we could absolutely make more money in a variety of other fields.
Fair enough.
We choose this field because we love it.
That's true.
That the layout skills you use for this, Stephen, and you know this because you've done games and things that are advertising and websites that are advertising for big companies. If used for advertising for big companies, you can add like 2 zeros onto the end of what RPGs make for the same amount of overall like layout and design skill and work.
Yeah, well, but it's a lot more It's a lot more work. Believe it or not, it's different work. I would leave it at that.
It's different.
It's different. It's not fun, or it's a lot of stress, and
yeah,
it's a lot more
hugely stressful.
It's a lot more stressful. So with these, so of this stuff you do, what's your favorite stuff? Because you have locations, classes, subclasses, monsters, templates, factions, adventures, magic items, spells, feats, maps.
Let's go. It's gonna
Rank
be
them.
A tie between either magic items or monsters, depending on how I'm feeling for them.
Magic items.
I really, really like magic items.
Oh, I hate making magic items
because it's one of the things that my players and all the players that I've ever played with engage with the most. They love getting magic items. And as someone that also really enjoys engaging in the kind of world building aspect of the being a DM, I find magic items are a really nice way to hook in players with the world building and be like, here's this cool magic item, here's just a sentence or two of the world building fluff from it. And I've found more success getting my players invested in the world and getting them invested in the world building aspects of it through magic items than probably anything else. They get this cool item, it's tied to a character, they start asking questions, and then the back and forth of answering those questions starts them down the rabbit hole of getting them more invested in the world, in their characters, and then they are playing the game on a deeper level.
Your players are different than mine because, unless it's the magic parts, this is the monster part system. This is how my games go. They're like, "Where's the loot?" And then I go through the loot and I explain everything. They're like, "That's great, sell it." They sell everything, and I swear to God, they sell everything. It's so rare that they keep anything. It's kind of annoying, actually. In fact,
I think there could be like a chart of the types of groups for loot, because there is the sell everything group, maybe sell and then buy some
they like to buy
ticket items with the money.
They buy
There's
stuff.
the hoarders,
yep,
but that they don't remember everything like Anto's group, but instead they hoard it all on a wiki or some kind of spreadsheet back in the day, a piece of paper that has all the items, and they know what they are if you ask the one treasure keeper. But most people just forget things in their giant vault of treasure and then never use it again.
Oh, I've been using an Excel spreadsheet for my group for 30 years, by the way. Because we also go to 20th level. So they just finished 17th level. They're going to 18th. And at 18th level, do you know how much loot they have at this point? I mean, it's always pages.
A lot.
Yeah. And well, that's the other thing. A lot of it they leveled out of. And in fact, I know what's going to happen because whenever they do, we're starting a new book. It's actually the 6th and last book. They're 18th level. We're gonna probably spend an entire session of just okay, let's go through every single thing. Sell, and most of it at this point is 100 gold, 200 gold.
Yeah,
they're dealing with 50, 10,000. It's actually 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 gold at this point. These are all rounding errors at this point. So just get rid of everything. So
some of my favorite magic items are the weird, esoteric little items that they're not necessarily like a +1 sword, but they'll have a really niche use for the player that you can have in your bag of holding or in your backpack, and you might have it there for 6, 8, 9 real world months, and then you come up against a problem and it stumps the players, and you as the GM get to just gently suggest, well, have a look through all of your bags and through those lists and see if anything comes up. And they go through and they find the weird taper candle that opens a plane to a different portal, and they're like, oh, suddenly we can get our way out of this dimensional prison that we're in because we didn't sell this candle that we picked up almost 2 years ago. Those are the kind of magic items that I love because they bring up such unexpected gameplay from the players.
See, in Steven's group, the story is they're in a prison plane.
Oh, they're
look through their bag and they're like, "Oh yeah, remember we got a candle that opens a portal to any other plane a few months back. That's right, we sold it." Darn, if we hadn't sold it, we would have been able to escape this prison plane. Oh, well, at least we have all this money for a bigger plus on our sword.
No, they don't. I told you, they don't even do that. They don't even.
Oh, right, they don't even
They
get
were like
the plus
3
on their
weeks.
sword.
They were 3 levels behind on their scaling. They were so
Were they
behind.
just Scrooge McDuck sleeping on the pile of money because they refused to spend it on anything?
because shopping sprees are boring, and you have to mentally be prepared that you're going to go in and spend 2 to 3 hours shopping, and you're going to not play. And that's I think what happens is that everyone has to be on the same page. Because I've had it where this happens a lot. Like one player's like, "Oh, I want to buy stuff," and the other 3 are like, "No, we're going into the dungeon," and then they don't buy something. So everyone has to be ready, and this is always the time. It's like because I run adventure paths, and they are naturally broken up between the chapters is when they level, which is nice because it's always like, okay, you're done. Here's all your loot. We're gonna start the next chapter. You're a new level. Go buy stuff. So there's always and now, so the book ended. They just hit level 18. They just got, I think they got 50,000, maybe 60,000, which in Pathfinder is an absolute mountain of gold. Like something like 60,000 gold pieces worth of stuff. I think it's even more. So they're gonna go crazy. I know they're gonna go to town and buy all these things, and and we'll probably spend an entire session just doing that. But I don't mind because they enjoy it, and it's actually easy for me because then I don't have to worry about running it. I
thought you said they don't enjoy it and they never buy
They
their stuff.
do, as long as we all know it's coming and we prepare for it. They enjoy it once in a while. Like they know this is going to be a loot session because they just finished the adventure and they have 60,000 gold pieces. Now they might just say, let's just go. And I'll be like, okay. They're also in Absalon, which is the world's largest city. So they can get anything. And that's also very nice. So like, okay, they're in the biggest city in the world. They have 18th level, tons of loot. Like they just look it up, and unless it's rare, they find it. There's no like tables I have to roll. There's nothing. It's like, whatever you find is there. You'll be able to get it, So, and that's also nice because sometimes that has actually been an issue. Another game, they were like 16th, 17th level, and they're in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, now what? It's like, all right. They actually figured out they had a way to teleport to Absalon. So they would literally teleport to Absalon, buy the stuff, and then come back. So there's always a way. So anyhow. So magic items, that's your favorite. And monsters. See, now I agree with you on monsters. Because monsters are awesome. I love monsters. So
yeah, there's just so much that you can do with monsters. You can play to theme. You can go for build them around specific abilities. You can build them around specific visuals. Monsters are a lot of fun to create because every one of them is different and every one of them can be approached really differently. And I also really like coming at monsters from the point of view of trying to elicit specific feelings or vibes from the players. So specifically when I'm running for my weekly group, not necessarily when I'm building publishable monsters, but when I'm running for this group that I know really well, I know how they're going to respond to different kind of monster stimuli. So if I build a monster that has this kind of vibe to it, I know this player is going to respond in this kind of way, and that will change the dynamic of an encounter. And that's a dial I can turn, and it becomes a really interesting puzzle to kind of solve that I really enjoy doing.
Okay. So you only DM though. You never really play characters.
I rarely play characters. I've played a lot more characters this year than I have for the last couple of years because I've been much more aggressive about asking people to run for me at every opportunity that I can.
And I ran for you, and we both played together with on Zebron Disney when we played Shadow Dark.
We did.
Oh, I don't even know who was on that Shadow Dark game. Seems like everyone was on that Shadow Dark game.
No, you just have now had everybody who was in that entire Shadow Dark game, except for the GM, onto this show because
Really?
we had 3 players, and it was me, Anto, and Stephanie.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
That's it. We've run out. I can't pull anyone else who was the player in that Shadow Dark game out of the hat for the next episode.
I was thinking of inviting Stephanie. That would have been funny. So.
Yeah, then it would have been all the players.
Right, that Shadow Dark game was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Shadow Dark. It fully occupied my brain for the whole next week. Very looking forward to playing more Shadow Dark. It was a lot of fun.
Got it. Yeah, no, we had Kelsey on last week, so Shadow Dark.
That's
is
right. 2 days
crazy.
after I played that game with you, so I got to tell her about my first Shadow Dark experience. She immediately knew which adventure we were playing. Of course.
But yeah, I played a lot more as a player this year than I have for the last couple of years. I used to play as a player fairly frequently, but it was always a case of we'd try and get campaigns off the ground and we'd play 1 or 2 sessions and they'd fizzle out. And I got tired of never having a campaign to run in long term. So I was like, fine, I will GM. And then I became the forever GM, and it was like 7 years later.
Well, but if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be writing a side quest.
Exactly.
See? So it all came around. It all came around. So I did have I can't remember what other question I had for you.
Well, you must have some question about creating adventures, right? Because how to create D&D adventures quickly and easily is the name of the episode. And clearly, I guess, Anto, if you want to transition over from side quest format to these 32-page adventures, you must have like some secret techniques you use to write those adventures quickly and easily that you think will make that new model work.
So for most folks at home who aren't concerned with publishing, my biggest tip for writing adventures quickly is
easily
is take 2 movies or other properties and do a fusion dance with them.
What? That's what I said.
Yes, same brainwave. Like
that's I have a whole talk on that.
It's such a good way for building adventures, and it works so well. So many of the adventures that I've run over the years have just been flipping through my Plex library and looking at movies and just picking a couple of them and going, right, okay, today we're running a combination of these 2 movies, and my campaign world map is dotted with icons that just say 2 adventure names, 2 movie names, as the entire prompt for when the players get to this hex, make an adventure that combines these 2 movies.
So yeah, what was the name of that thing I did? Like how to top 5
like movie tips that will make your GMing like sizzle or something like that. It was something like that.
Yeah. I've given the talk even at Gen Con. It's basically
techniques from film.
Yeah, stealing,
that you can use.
Yeah, basically how to steal techniques from movies and put it into adventures. And
yeah,
I have a whole thing on that because it's basically how movies have figured out writing and script development perfectly, and you just
exactly like the structure of it. Just when it comes to writing an adventure, if you treat running your game like being a director, so many other aspects of running your game will start to improve. This is something that I thoroughly enjoyed about my first experience playing Monster of the Week recently. And we were playing a very TV show inspired session, very X-Files inspired. And the keeper of that game explicitly set up the premise as, you are starring in a TV show. We're going to run this though it's a TV show. We had a cold open. They described a lot of stuff using camera moves and using a lot of the language of television and film. And it made their delivery of exposition and their movement between scenes so much more efficient than I've seen in a lot of one-shots probably ever, because we all as players understood and had this shared language of, we're in an episode of TV. We don't need to play out this entire scene. We know that we've cut to black. We know that we've gone to a commercial. We know that we've done X, Y, and Z. We're into the next scene. We're only here for what's on screen. And it made everything much more punchy.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of technique can really work well for genre games. I've seen like a GM in like a superhero comic inspired game that described things in terms of like the comic pages. Like someone did a big move and they're like, okay, this is going to be that whole 2-page spread where they show you punching on one side and they show the enemy flying away on the other side or something like that. They did it better than I do because it was their technique and style and not really something that I've done. But it's always fascinating when you can sort of blend those genres together.
So someone wrote that CR is the biggest concern for D&D and monsters, that purple worms are trivial for 7th level adventures. Yeah, that is always an issue, is that it's like one thing, Pathfinder, the balance is so tight that it is interesting. It's like you can fight not always, but I've had it where you'll have say a level, we've talked about this, like a level 5 party fighting a level 7 monster, and they're just getting their ass handed to them, and then they're level 7 and they fight the same monster that's a pretty normal fight, and then they're level 9 and they just fight that level 7 and it's just like a total joke, they just like crush it. But if they're higher than you, they're hard, and they can be very hard. But in D&D, I always hear people are always like, oh, I'm level 5 and I'm fighting a level 15 monster and killing it, like no problem.
I am a fairly big, fairly recent proponent of the CR system and the encounter building system in 5e. It does actually work if you run it as it is written, and the problem is a lot of people aren't running it as it is written. I had made a whole video on it fairly recently, and it caused a lot of discussion. And obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it in broader kind of encounter design elements, like as a purple worm as an example. Tarask, another great example. If you've got any characters that can fly or achieve any kind of flight or gain any kind of distance, any monster that doesn't have a ranged attack will eventually just die. So there is an element of poor monster design that comes through depending on the monster, but a lot of it, I think, is a lot of folks don't read the Dungeon Master's Guide, because the Dungeon Master's Guide is terribly laid out for 5th edition, and I don't blame them for not wanting to read it cover to cover, because it's not designed to be read cover to cover. But in not doing so, you miss out on a lot of actually really useful guidance on playing the game, that when you apply it, the game runs a lot better. It's just so many people don't bother to read that because it's presented really poorly and buried in amongst a really poorly laid out book.
I guess, to be fair to the people who hold the other view there, like the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guides, encounter building rules for like a large group of creatures were off, and Wizards has released multiple iterations of patches or changes in later books for that as well. And like the idea that when you're level 16, that like 3 or 4 level CR6 creatures is going to be like a tough fight for your group, which the original 2014 DMG had due to some weird multipliers that you put in there that they removed later on, was always not. I mean, then that's not what most people talk about, but that was always not really true.
Yeah, it's got multipliers based on the number of combatants in relation to the number of players. So if you have 1 monster versus 4 players, it downgrades the amount of XP or upgrades if you're outnumbering them. It is a lot of mathy, and it's based around a lot of the XP equivalent versus the CR, which a lot of people just don't even look at when they're looking at the monster stat blocks. They look at the CR and ignore the XP value, which is actually the number that matters for like the mechanical portion of the building of the encounters. But I've been running strictly rules as written encounter building for 5th edition since going back to it. And with very few exceptions, it's worked exactly as it should. All the kind of severe encounters have been severe, or the levels of severity have worked to my expectations in almost all cases.
This is with the most updated version before the revised rules, or the 2014 DMG?
2014 DMG.
Really?
Yeah, but using the specifically XP and not CR. Because
it does say it does say to use XP, absolutely. But some of the multipliers it puts in XP that they removed in, which one was it? Was it Xanathar's where they put out the new one that
Xanathar's has a version that's got like tables where it boils it down to, if you have a number of players, here's how many monsters it should be.
Correct.
But the middle band of that table is just an abstraction of the 2014 print-in one. The lower and higher end it does tweak, but I think the middle band is just
very close.
A more simplified version of the way they did it in 2014.
It's very close. I was told that it was different, but you obviously analyzed it correctly, and so did I. And it's almost exactly the same, just presented in an easier way to understand, except it removes one of the multipliers for having a larger number of creatures that threw encounters off. Yeah. Which I think a lot of GMs already were removing that multiplier from 2014 to begin with, and just going by the base XP of the creatures, like you were saying. Yeah, which is technically a house roll, but that multiplier didn't ever really make sense.
It's one of those things that as you gain more experience with any system, you get used to kind of feeling it out for when it comes to encounter building. But I am hoping that the 2024 DMG is much better in its presentation and its layout, so that people can find that information and actually apply it, versus, because the number of posts that I see online of people being like, this thing doesn't exist or doesn't work, when it's there in some form in the DMG from 2014. Ginny D did a video about it just today, talking about elements from the DMG that people just routinely miss because it's such a poorly laid out book.
Well, I found
even if you lay out well, they're just different. People skip certain portions of books like that. Like, I've been in this experience from Pathfinder where there was a major rule about like archetypes that was in an archetype introduction about like what are archetypes, and in Pathfinder first edition, that just like I had to answer about that online like 50 times. And then that's when I realized people don't read those introductions. So if you have a crucial rule that's in those introductions, but is not what people could intuit by just skipping it and going straight into the rules content, you're going to get in trouble.
Well, I actually found out when I was at Gen Con that supposedly is that James Wyatt was supposed to write the entire Dungeon Master's Guide for 2014, and he wrote half of it, and then he was moved to the Magic the Gathering team, and they were like, well, wait a second, I'm only halfway done. And they're like, well, and he only wrote half the book, and then it was cobbled together with other team members very quickly, and that's why it's kind of a mess. So he was supposed to write the whole thing. So
because James Wyatt wrote the 4th edition DMG, and that is one of the best books for Dungeon Masters in any edition of D&D, in my opinion.
Well, what they did, I mean, there's a whole other story, but supposedly in 2014, there was a very real danger that they were going to have D&D sold off to Fantasy Flight, and they were going to run D&D. And to save D&D, what they did is, because it was all under WoTC, is they moved almost everyone. I think there was only one full-time person left. They moved every single person onto the Magic team, and had not even a skeleton. It was like a ghost. It was less than a skeleton. It was a ghost team on D&D, but they were still putting it out. This is what they were coming out with D&D 2014. They had like no one there, and the problem was that he was still, although he was on the Magic team and others were, they were still working on D&D. But then the Magic team's like, oh no, we need you, and you're going to work on our stuff. It's like, wait a second, I'm working on D&D. They're like, no, you're not. You're working on Magic. So this happened, and that's why everything. It's a miracle that D&D is still alive. I'll leave it at that. It's a miracle.
The more I hear about the kind of behind the scenes of the production of those 2014 books, and the more of the circumstances around it, it is a miracle that they ever made it to print. But it does seem like James Wyatt is more heavily involved in the DMG for the 2024 version, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, everything I've seen in the previews make it look like the 2024 DMG is going to be a huge step up.
Oh yeah, 2014. It's a huge step up.
Even though, yeah, it's probably going to be 98% the same content, but just the order of the 2014 one was a mess. And if you reorder it to make it easier to understand, it's going to be better.
No, they're redoing. I have the table of contents on my phone.
Yeah, I've seen it. It looked great.
Yeah, I mean, they totally redid it. It's a very different book from what I can tell. I think they basically more or less threw out the old book and just rewrote it from scratch, because that old book was, it is actually. The more and more I hear, I can't believe that not only was D&D 2014 even came out, but that it was as big of a success that it was. Yeah. It is a miracle upon miracles that any of this happened. I can't. It is. What is it, failing upward? And not even failing upward. It's like, and the thing is, D&D has had this their entire life cycle. Like, they just always have trouble and problems, and yet they're always successful, and it's just so bizarre.
Yeah, when you read like the history of D&D in the 70s, and you read stories of like so much of like the art being done by like high schoolers, and it just feels like for its entire history it's just been duct taped together, and the tracks being thrown in front of the train as it comes barrel, just for the entire time that it's existed. And it is kind of wild that it has survived as long as it has, and has grown to the size that it has.
Well, did you listen to the, there's the podcast going through the entire history of Dungeons & Dragons?
I have not.
And what is it called? It's called, you're looking it up. I forgot. When We Were Wizards. That you have to listen to. That's incredible, because they have all the people who were there who are still alive, and they interviewed most of them. Now. And it's fascinating, because these are the people who were there. And then when you hear like all the stuff they were doing and how many people they had working there, and and then they bought buildings, and it was madness. And it's fascinating. And the first half, it's I think 14 episodes, and it's like the first half's pretty interesting. But then the second half, once they actually become a huge hit, oh boy. And also what's fascinating is just how different life was. Because now, and I think about this all the time, like you are one person who's putting out this monthly magazine, basically, and is putting out a book, and you're one person. And it's, and you hear on D&D and Wizards of the Coast, and I mean, or back then TSR, like they needed, a team for the art, a team for the layout, a team for copywriting. It was like everything was huge. Like you wanted to put out a book, you needed 50 people. It's like now you want to put out a book, you need one. It's incredible.
And it's one of the things that I am constantly mindful of as I continue in this space. I have seen so many of our peers kind of have incredible Kickstarter success, and that incredible success become almost immediate curse for them. That they overfund, and the overfunding absolutely cripples them because they are dealing with economies of scale that they have no experience with, and no way of delivering, and they don't have the experience to navigate all the million different elements that goes into making a book. And it's something that I've been aware of since day one of, I would much rather go tiny, little by little, and I would rather stay a little fish where I am just able to support myself and get my books to people on time. Like, I am more scared of funding £100,000 than I am of not making my goal, because I don't want to suddenly be in a situation where things go too far in front of me, and I am then unable to do what I do.
Yeah, I never do that. I'm the opposite. I figured it out after we're done. I'm like, well, figure it out.
So I think this pivots into a super chat that we had a little while back. So I'll just do the super chat so we don't skip it for too long. Torin McCabe said, what are the best future career growth paths for an RPG designer? Build YouTube community, Kickstarter, DMs Guild, D&D, Sigil, contract for small publishers? I would say that it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to make a living with your future RPG growth path, then I would say a lot of people don't quit their day job and they just kind of do it on the side. But it said career in that super chat, so that makes it sound like you want to make it your entire career. I would say there's no reliable way to do that you can just be like, I'm sure this is going to work, or even I'm relatively confident this is going to work. You have to, in some senses, get a little bit lucky, and you have to put in a lot of work, often before the point where you're making money and at a point where you're losing money before you can make it.
A big thing that I don't think gets talked enough about enough, not only in our industry, but just the entire kind of influencer sphere, is how much luck plays a factor in absolutely everything that we do as kind of influencers and making products and stuff. Like, I've seen so many people, so many incredibly talented people pour their heart and soul into things and make what I think is objectively incredible stuff, only for it to fall flat and them to make no money and to go and have to get, normal jobs. And I've seen people who you might consider considerably less talented with less skills just explode, and suddenly they don't have to worry about money ever again for their entire life. And luck is an immense part of it. And I think it pays to be aware of that immediately, because it'll help keep you from developing too much of an ego, which is really easy to do if you start finding a bit of success. The other element of it, when it comes to doing this kind of stuff as a career, I think if you intentionally want to build it as a career, start treating everything like it's a business immediately. Go into it with a business mindset. You need to be looking at things like it is a business. You need to be keeping expenses. You need to be doing the business stuff kind of right away, because that'll build you a strong foundation to build up on from, versus, I'm just going to start making a bit of money and suddenly find myself successful and then have to figure out all the paperwork and how the taxes work.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say don't do it. like do it on the side. That's about it.
Yeah, absolutely do it on the side. Do not quit your day job. Generally, when someone's like, "Oh, how can I want to be a writer. I want to be anything creative." I'm always usually I'm like, if there is anything else that you enjoy doing that makes you money, do that, because you can then just carry on doing this creative thing on the side and keep your love of it. And if you still want to do it and that doesn't deter you, then you're probably going to do it anyway. You've got that kind of fire inside you. Awesome, you're going to do it. Keep your day job for as long as you possibly can, because the stability of that is unparalleled. And then eventually you're going to get to a point where your day job, hopefully you'll get to a point where your day job becomes a hindrance to everything else. And that's the scary moment where you're like, I've got to resign and hope that this creative thing that I'm doing sustains me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know what else. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. What did you think of the new rules, the new D&D?
I really, really like them. I've been really impressed.
Well, what do you like about it? Well, what do you like?
I like, broadly, I like the presentation of the book. I think that the accessibility of the rules in the 2024 book is significantly improved. I really like the rules glossary. I have found myself referencing the rules glossary, even though we aren't switching to the 2024 rules yet for our regular game. going to wait until we've got all of the rules. What I found is now, instead of going and looking at things online when we have our occasional question about how does this thing work, now I just go into the 2024 rules, because chances are it has been clarified in there. So I don't need to go and search for it online. I can just look at it in the new rules, and there will be a clarification for whatever it is we're looking at. And that's really nice.
What do you think of the new layout for the stat block? Someone asked you for the monsters.
So
I guess.
It's about the only thing I don't like. I really don't like the way that I like most of it. I don't like the way that they display the ability scores. The like weird. The table, the layouts of the tables looks really weird to me.
It looks really weird. I'm not even sure why they did that. I'm like, is there ever a time where the stat and the save are different? Or I'm like,
yes, if they have proficiency in save.
Oh, okay.
What I don't understand is putting it in lines so that you're not having it as a 2-column kind of, it's like 4 columns, but 2 columns for the 2 kinds of stats. Putting it just down the line wouldn't have actually taken up any more space, and it would be more immediately readable. Because as soon as I saw them, I started mocking up how am I going to do my stat blocks when I eventually adopt the new SRD when it comes out, because I'm not going to make them look like that, because I don't like them.
Yeah, when you have something like that added complexity, it just takes your eyes a little bit longer to process it, and it makes it feel a level more abstracted away from the reader.
Dude, what'd we do? Our layout looks nothing like that. I just gave up. I was like, I'm not doing that layout. I'm making it look like a Pathfinder monster, and there you go. So I don't even bother with those layouts, because they're very hard to put in, because the block actually messes up the layout, because then you can't
I've abandoned the block.
Yeah, the block is atrocious.
Got rid of the block towards the end of year 1, I think. Because, like I said, that it just is weirdly restricting, and it just makes things much harder.
Yeah, it's weird. So when I started and we put out the Battlezoo Bestiary, I bought every single book I can find, and everyone, and I mean everyone, had that block. And I tried to do it. I tried. I couldn't get it to work really with like putting in because we're trying to put in very big pictures, and like I saw like all the tricks and the layout they had to do to get that to work, and they have huge blocks of white space. I'm like, it's a real mess. It's like it just doesn't really fit. And then I was like, you know what? Screw it. I gave up. I'm like, I'm just making it flow, and they could figure it out. And I showed this to a whole bunch of people who only publish 5e, like Hit Point Press and a few others that I talked to, and they're all like, "Huh." They're like, "I never thought of that." I'm like, not that they think of it. It's like, well, yeah, I guess you could do that. It's like, we just thought you had to kind of do it, like it's like, yeah, screw it. And now I see a lot of people. It's becoming more and more common that people are just throwing it out and just doing layouts however they want, Because
I think there is benefit for sticking to some of the conventions of the layout of the system that you're designing for, because the customer has an expectation of formatting, and if you stick to some of it, it helps speed through their first read of your product. But I don't think the block helps. It's one of those things that I don't think there's much detriment to getting rid of it, and it makes our lives as layout much easier.
Well, I think that was
you can fit more content too when you get rid of the block.
You get more monster.
Yeah,
more for your money.
Well, what happened is I think it was a holdover from 4e, because 4e had that block. I actually see, this is the weird part. I loved the 4e monster stat block. I thought that was excellent. I thought it was really well done. I loved seeing it. I loved reading it. It felt like a card, it felt like a magic card or something. I was like, this is really good. And I think they were trying to do the same thing, but it's amazing. They didn't actually even come close, to be honest. It wasn't even close to being the same, because also 4e and 5e are very different. Like 4e had, what was it? The daily...
the at-will, the daily.
Right, that will's right. The different types of actions. So it was very organized, and you always knew where to find stuff. But this, because the monsters, they don't always have the same information, so you always have to read it. You can't just scan it. Like a 4E stat block you can scan, but you can't scan. One of the things that
I'm
5E.
Looking forward to for the new stat blocks, though, the categorization of traits, actually getting the trait element. I'm hoping we'll see. Previously, we've seen a lot of bonus action stuff put up in that trait section. I'm hoping we'll see a lot of that moved to the discrete bonus action section, and keep traits for passive abilities, things that aren't interacting with the action economy, so that you get more of that easy to read as you're flitting through the page kind of interaction with the design.
And easier to run by far, because you go in and you're like, hey, I haven't used my bonus action yet this turn. What can I? Oh, there's a bonus action section. That's good. That's great. Now I know what I can do. I don't have to read through the passive traits and other things and then kind of fish out the bonus action from there.
Try the small set. Pathfinder stat blocks are far superior to 5e. I don't know about far superior, but they are very good. They're very clean. They're very easy to read. And that's why I literally took the Pathfinder stat block and made a 5e version of it and said, there you go. It's it looks like if you look fast, it looks like a Pathfinder stat block, and that's not an accident.
Got the benefit of the icons, which increase readability immensely, because once you're familiar with the icons, you can just scan them and you know exactly what the ability is and how it works in terms of its action economy.
That's also that's the connective to there's a lot of familiarity and although you see they did it right, it's like, okay, the stat blocks can be wildly different from each other, and there's a lot of things that can be in the stat block that are different from monster to monster, but yet it's still very well held together and is very fast and easy to read. And it's amazing because 5e is trying to do the same thing, but yet they kind of failed. Not completely failed, but not as good. It's just not as easy to read. It's just...
I've always wondered with 5e specifically whether it's a hesitance to go back to a design that made people think of 4e, because presenting the information more efficiently would be more like 4th edition. And I've always wondered, with a lot of elements of early 5th edition design especially, whether it was a case of we specifically don't want it to look like 4th edition. So we're moving away from that for good and bad.
Yeah, and that was something someone said, the shift to smaller spell lists. That was the thing I remember when I first saw the Pathfinder block, is they only list the spells for, like, you know, if you cast level 9 spells, the old monsters would have level 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 cantrips. It would have every single spell. It's like, come on, you don't need all of that. And the way they do in Pathfinder, it's like, okay, here's the level 9, 8, 7, and cantrips. And that's it. They don't even bother with, unless it's an important spell. Like every so often you'll see like if they have like a fireball or something, it's like they will have the 3rd level spell snuck in there. But otherwise they only really have the top 2 or 3 levels and cantrips, and that's it. Because they're like, no one's going to bother with those low level spells.
It would be easier with the example of Pathfinder. Pathfinder's a great example for this because it splits off the spells into the spell lists of arcane, primal, etc. To be able to go, here's your 8th and 7th and 6th level spells, but then your 3rd level spells, choose any 3 arcane spells, and then
I don't love that either, because then you got to like do stuff on the fly.
Then you have to do work.
Yeah, you have to do work.
Well,
you don't want to do that.
If a DM wants to, presumably a caster that is casting those high level spells could cast the lower level spells anyway. So if they want to, they have to do work anyway. So at least if there is a list, with the list, you can direct them and go, this is the vibe of spells that they've got. So you're narrowing it down somewhat.
Yeah. Well, what
you could also like kind of go in between, closer to what Steven was saying. Maybe if you take only the top spells that are worth casting for combat, take the ones that are worth casting for the story, narrative, utility spells that they need, and then maybe you could put like in the flavor text something like at the GM's discretion, you can add
that's what
some additional spells of the lower spell rank levels in the same theme, but typical examples of this creature do not have those, but you can add them if you want.
Right. It's one of those things that, again, an experienced DM is always going to know, obviously, this creature could do that thing. I know where I need to go to find these things. I have the experience to do these things. But I'm always thinking, first time or early GM who, for some reason, is running a higher level monster and interacting with this type of monster for the first time, if they're looking at this thing where, why is half the spell list just missing? And having some kind of guidance for those newer folks that don't have that assumed knowledge or the built knowledge that they've got through experience.
What did you think of Word? I mean, fourth, I think they used to literally just put the spells as abilities. They didn't even have spells. It was just like
it was all abilities.
It was all abilities, right?
Yeah.
And so there was like nothing. It was just everything was there, and I was like, wow, that was another interesting way to do it. Like you never had to look anything up. It was just all there.
In the spectrum of never having to look anything up versus always having to look anything, I'd much rather never have to look anything up, because as I get familiar with the system and familiar with the presentation of stat blocks, etc., and get more of that familiarity, I can learn to look at a stat block and know what I need to ignore, versus someone that is brand new. If the information isn't there, they have no way of knowing where to go to get that. So I always tend to favor information and presentation that favors the brand new person that's come into this for the very first time.
Well, what we've been doing, you see, that's something that things are going to change though, because I mean, you're still in person, but let me tell you, I was at Gen Con and I went to the Sagamore where they run all the Pathfinder games, and man, every single person had an iPad. It just everyone. It wasn't like it used to be, like some people had it and it was like the one or two people, but at this point everyone had an iPad. But also it was faster, especially for spellcasters, because everything's there. There's no looking up. You just click and it brings everything up, and then they can just do it. It's much faster. So you can run more complex characters now, whether you're in person, because a lot of people use the online builders or iPads, or if you're using a VTT, it's all right there, and you press, at least the way I program my own, I press a button and it does spell. It literally does everything. I even have it, but I code my own spells, so I have that fireball, I have it list, and it does the damage all the way. He has it, he's a sorcerer, and he can have it go up to level 9. And he says what level. It's actually, you want to have fun? This is fun. He says, okay, I'm going to cast a level 9 fireball. And then it lists out the damage for every single level, 8 through 9. And then we're like, oh, the level 7 fireball would have done more damage. And we're always laughing. We're like, oh, crap, I could have done that one. But, it always, it just the other night when that happened, it was like the level 8 did more than the level 9. He's like, oh well. But everything is listed. It's like it even scales, and you don't even have to. I even don't like it that you had to, like, before we had it, like, you press fireball, then you see one level. I'm like, too many clicks. It's like if you have 2 clicks versus 1 click, that's 100% more clicks. You press fireball, it just does every level, and you just choose the one you want. Things like that. But anyhow, it's just so fast. You just press a button and it just does everything. It gives you the damage for every level. It gives you the DC. I don't have it that it automatically does it on the characters. I find it just easier just to do it manually. That's the one thing I don't do. I'm actually one of those people who I automate text, but I don't automate actions. I find them very difficult and messes things up. And the second or two of savings you get is killed when the 1 or 2 times it accidentally, you're like, oops, I hit my player by accident. How much damage did I just do to you and kill you by accident? Undo it, heal, and then you're sitting there for 5 minutes fixing something. I don't do that. But anyhow,
I think for the more mechanically complex games, the increase of automation through VTTs, online character builders, incredible. I do worry somewhat the industry as a whole is going to move in the future towards not thinking about the printed at the table non-digital play experience going forward, though.
That's already happening. I've had this discussion because Magic is kind of doing that. So Magic was always right at the tip of too complex. Like, it was right at the cusp of almost being too hard to play, to keep in your head, which is really where the masters, like the master players versus the non-masters would come in, because they could really figure out all the computations and all the different ways you can use your deck against things. But because the Magic Arena is doing so well, you can see it. Like, they are literally writing things for Magic Arena, and you could tell, because they're just too complex. They're just very hard to use at a table, and you have to have tokens or notes to keep track of things. It's just, and unless you really know how it works, you're going to spend a few minutes there reading it and then talking about it with the other players. Like, how does this work? It's like, well, you got to do this and do that. This, like, fine. But then when you're on Magic, you just press a button, it does it. So yeah, it's already happening.
I think that my concern is that there's a kind of an unconscious level of it going on. Like with the new 2024 PHP, there's no blank character sheet in it. There's only the version that has the.
That wasn't an accident. That was not. Everyone's like, oh, why didn't they? They forgot. I'm like, no, they didn't. They're making you go to the website because they need to hook you, man. That is marketing 101.
The issue I have with that, though, is it does just make the product less useful.
You're 100% right.
And the whether an accident or, I don't necessarily think that that specific instance was an accident, but I know in Matt Colville was on the Eldritch Lawcast recently and was discussing how their team with MCDM for Draw Steel had an experience where they went and ran a bunch of test sessions at Gen Con and came back from that, and their experience was that they had already started to move into the mindset of designing for digital and not considering a bunch of stuff for the physical product and for physical play, and they had to sit down and kind of reassess and like make sure that they were accommodating for the physical book and for the physical play experience, because they had unconsciously gotten so used to the digital first default that there was stuff that was just missing from
I'm going to tell you,
physical.
It's going to get worse. It's never going to get better, because now we're getting people in the industry who have only been on digital. Like, they don't even, I've said it a million times in the show, is that my kids went to a school and they went all digital. They had no paper. They were paperless. Very, very young, they started them off in like elementary school. And even when they do things on paper, they take pictures of it and then send it to it. So everything was done paperless. Now, some of this was environmental. Some of this was, I mean, you know how much paper a school goes through? Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's incredibly
outrageous.
Expensive. Yeah, it's actually kind of disgusting how much they went through. So a lot of it was to actually cut. I think they were cutting out like literally hundreds, if not $1 million in like, cost and printing costs, because it was ridiculous how much they were spending. So it really, there is a cost savings, but they have grown up, and my daughter in college now, like, they never, even in their classrooms, everyone has computers. It's like no one is using pen and paper. Like everyone uses computers. Everyone uses laptops. Everyone uses tablets. And that's it. It's just, it's just easier, faster. They can bring it everywhere. It's like there's nothing really to lose. Everything's on the cloud. It's, it's just...
Like there's a huge number of benefits from it, both in ease of use, accessibility, convenience. My main concern is that in kind of either the willful ignoring of the physical when companies are continuing to produce physical, or the kind of forgetting of elements that should translate to physical, or overcomplicating things because they're working in a digital first medium, but continuing to produce physical products, is you make the accessibility of those physical products worse and worse. And if you're going to continue to offer the physical products, they should be fully supported packages. And it's not just a Wizards of the Coast thing. I think we're going to see it industry-wide because, like you said, more and more of the entire world is moving into digital only and has only existed digital only.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like that's my big concern, is that people will continue to offer books because that's what you do, and books make money, but they will stop considering books as the medium and stop designing for books and designing for the physical play, and it will just get worse as an experience.
Yeah. Well, or the books are, I keep saying it, I mean, unfortunately, I do think the books are going to become like almost collector's items. They are, I wouldn't be surprised, the next version is going to be as beautiful and as amazing as the one that came out, but it's going to be $100+ because it's something you buy if you're really into it, and it's a collector's item, not if you want to play. If you want to play, you get the digital version. It's you get the book if you're weird, and it's becoming more and more like that. It just is. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, you were when you started off, you were saying how hard it was to print these books and deal with them, and I mean, it's a heck of a lot easier when you're sitting here and you literally lay out your monthly magazine, output the PDF, upload it, and send it to everyone like that day, as opposed to I gotta spend all this time designing the book, and then you have to wait another 5-6 months for it to get printed and shipped to the warehouse. And like right now I'm dealing even with people like, it was sent to the wrong address, my neighbor stole it. I'm like, oh god,
all of those elements, like it's just lost in the void. That was the fun one in the first annual. The very first one used a third-party service to do shipping. So the printer did the printing, and then they had a partner that handled the shipping logistics. And just like 40-50 books just got lost in the ether during transit to the customers and just never turned up.
Yeah, happens all the time.
So for the second one, I was like, no, I will send them to me and I will package them and I will send them. And none of them got lost.
Yeah, it's not even on you. Like, that happened to me is that I lost something like 50 of my books just disappeared, but it was FedEx. And my printer's like, don't worry, they will eventually show up. But they did. They actually did. It was like something on their side. But because they grabbed them all at the same time, so it was like a pallet that got lost.
It's before like leaving to do this full time, I worked as admin for a delivery company, so I have seen the way that the inside of warehouses deal with packages and the ridiculous ways that items can become lost. So many times, it's literally because parcels will friction together and the label will peel off one and it'll get to its next point along the chain, and there's just a box with no label, and they're like, we don't know what this is. And if there's no invoice inside, then it goes to wherever that company designates for lost parcels to go to die.
So people are saying that they would be more happy with WoTC if they made downloadable digital content like PDFs and stuff. That will never, ever, 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 ever happen because they spent $140 million on D&D Beyond, and they need you in their ecosystem so they can make money. They will never give you something outside their ecosystem because why would they? Because they need you. That's not just them. That's everyone. Okay, that's why Disney Plus exists and Netflix and Paramount Plus and HBO Max. Like, they're trying to they want you in their ecosystem. And this was just learned with video games of all things, because I always go back to video games, is that so it used to be back in the day that whenever a new video game console came out, there would always be a different winner. So one year it would be Sony, then one year it'd be Nintendo, then one year it'd be Microsoft. Like there was always a different winner. But now, for the first time ever, there is no real difference. And because everything is online, everything is digital, and really they're just machines that have content on them. And they found out that this is it. There's just like, that's why they're basically doing everything in their power to put people on their, on their platforms. And that's why Xbox also went with their Play system, where you can spend like $15 a month.
Game Pass?
Game Pass. And that's, which by the way ended up being a huge failure kind of, and they're like, they spent so much money and they didn't make enough money on it. But anyhow, but that's it. It's like they learned that they're just trying to make systems and places for people to go and ecosystems. The downside of this is that I was going to say downside is that we're starting to see that it's incredibly expensive to keep and maintain these. And then like Paramount Plus is trying to sell they did sell it. They sold it because they couldn't keep it up. Disney is not, they're like not even making money on there. It's one of these, it's a good idea in theory if you get everyone and you're Netflix or you're Fortnite. Like Fortnite's made $20 billion since it launched. Yeah. Like, so everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to make $20 billion. Well, then you get, you get, what's the one that just closed in like 2 weeks? I can't remember. Then you get the ones that like last 2 weeks and then close. So Concord law, Concord, $200 million, and they had 25,000 players and it's gone. So anyhow,
I can't think off the top of my head. Are there any other companies other than D&D that have their own proprietary VTTs and like their own enclosed ecosystems for digitally delivering their goods? I know there's Nexus, which deals with multiple IPs.
Ember is going to be doing that with Foundry.
Ember's releasing a physical book, right?
They are releasing actually, you're right. They are releasing a physical book, but it's designed to work specifically within Foundry and all.
Are they releasing PDFs as well, or is it
probably
purely Foundry?
I think it's probably PDFs too.
Because I know that there will be a dedicated VTT for MCDM's Draw Steel.
Yes.
And up until now, they've done PDFs. It'll be interesting to see whether once that becomes available, they still do PDFs, or whether, because at the moment, we only really have WoTC D&D that has their own kind of proprietary ecosystem. Everything else kind of lives on platforms with multiple other games. So the companies that make these games don't own the platforms, so they're not incentivized to not sell PDFs in the same way that Wizards is. So I'll be interested to see as we get more companies making proprietary VTTs and these systems, whether they start pulling PDFs as well and thinking, oh, well, WoTC do it, we can get away with it, or whether kind of the community pressure will keep them offering PDFs and it's only WoTC that kind of remains this PDF-free bastion.
They're the only ones. It's too expensive. It's too hard. It's too much money, and it's incredible. I mean, this is what I do for a living: is build, websites and like living systems. And it's like the one thing that always happens is whenever I build a site for a big company, it'll be like, okay, they built the site, and then they're all happy about it. And then, we maintain it. And then before you know it, like within 2-3 years, it's like, we got to rebuild it. And they're like, what? Like, it's like, it never ends. It's like, this is a living, breathing, existing thing. You can't just, technology changes, you have to continuously maintain.
Incredible how quickly websites go out of just become redundant, and how quickly you're like, it feels like as soon as you say, I've got a new website, yay, shiny new website, you have to start working on the new website.
Yeah, you have to.
I feel like I've been on that treadmill for every website I've ever had the entire time that I've been self-employed.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what I do. I build these, and we're always telling them, I'm like, you kind of need a budget. And they like it. I mean, now they're a lot smarter, but back in the day, they would be like, huh? They thought it was like one and done, like a brochure. and then they'd have money for it, and then they have to plan like a year ahead of time. Like, they don't think of it as a living, breathing thing. A lot of them would think of it as just a print brochure. That actually is probably the closest analogy I can think of. Now they're smarter, and again, things have changed. People are grown up with them and have lived their whole lives with websites. They understand them a lot better. 25 years ago was every time it was always the same thing. It's like pulling teeth for them to actually make a website. They built it, and then they're like, okay, we're done. And I'm like, no, you're not done. I hate to break it to you. You're stuck with this it's like a pet. You're stuck with this forever, man. That's never unless you kill it. You have to continuously update and maintain it forever and ever and ever. And so anyhow,
Dead Stick in the chat says that if they wanted more people to use digital, they should include the codes to each book so that you unlock it on D&D Beyond as you get the book, which is a common thing that people always ask for, and one is the codes to the D&D Beyond version in the books.
I have codes. I got a code from D&D Beyond.
I think it's that they're starting to offer more.
I got this.
Get a discount.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, special offer kind of deal versus just.
And there's a code. I'm not going to show it to you, but I got a redemption code right here, my friend. So they have been doing that.
It's I think that they're moving at the glacial pace that you would expect from a $1 billion company. And when the rest of the industry is so much smaller than them and can move so much faster, I think that a lot of consumers grow to expect that level of speed from Wizards of the Coast, which I don't think is always super appropriate, because they are dealing with a level of kind of corporation that the rest of us just don't have to deal with.
Yeah. And well, that's the other thing. They're a huge, it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and, they're planning years and years and years ahead of time. And even, quote, us fast companies, plan year ahead of time. Like, they just have to, WoTC just has to plan 2 or 3 years ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So so quick, agile company can plan a couple months ahead of time, or, so it's still pretty, it's not as fast as it seems. I'll leave it at that.
But even from the perspective of a lot of the smaller privately owned companies in the space, as owners, you can make a decision, and that decision can be implemented as quick as the logistics allow. Whereas in a corporation like WoTC, they can hope to make a decision and then spend 6 months running it up the chain to get the person who actually has to make the decision to even hear about the decision, and then go back and forth for 2 years, and then suddenly it's another 3 years before they even decide to make the decision. It's a level of just bureaucracy that almost every other company in the industry just doesn't have to deal with.
Piero was saying it's like, maybe you don't need companies so big. It's not that you need companies so big. It's that what ended up happening with D&D, and I actually can tell you the minute that this happened, is that Hasbro decided that they never ever mentioned WoTC, they never mentioned Magic the Gathering, and they never mentioned D&D in any of their corporate earning reports. If you go back just a few years, they were never mentioned. Not once.
It's like, what, 4 or 5 years ago when they started bringing it up, somewhere around there?
They started to talk about Magic, and then right when Covell came out, not Matt Covell, when Stranger Things and Critical Role came out, is when they started to mention D&D. It was a little bit here and there, but they were, they would never. It wasn't even a footnote. It was actually like part of something else, and then I realized, oh my god,
it looks like it was 2015 when they said D&D is really on a tear, which is one of the first times the shareholder meetings mentioned D&D. So it was actually 9 years ago. Okay, so it felt like 5 or 6.
Okay, well now I've been saying it for I've been saying it for 7 years, so I guess the time's caught up to me. But the point is, it wasn't that long ago, and there's a company that's 50 years old, and I remember the day Toys R Us went out of business, that's when it all changed. Because when Toys R Us went out of business, that became a pivotal point because suddenly all these companies lost distribution. And this actually happened in comic books. So when Marvel bought out, when Marvel decided to go into comics distribution, and by doing that, they actually put all the comic book stores out of business by accident. That's like a whole other story. Then they realized, oh crap. And then they sold themselves. They actually went bankrupt, and then they sold themselves to Disney because, like, okay, there's nowhere for us to sell our actual products. Yep. And this actually happened. It was like when Toys R Us. I remember when Toys R Us went out of business. I was like, oh no. And it's like I can only imagine what the meetings in Mattel and Hasbro were like, and they realized, okay, time to go all in on digital, like time to go all in on. They did two things. They went all in on digital. They started to pivot quickly, and they also pivoted to the collector's market. Those were the two things they went to very fast. And nowadays, I mean, I used to love going to Toys R Us and go to a toy store. Like, when was the last time you went to a toy store? Ever. Like, do kids go to toy stores? No. They have their iPhones and their iPads and TikTok, and that's it. Like
most toy stores are filled with video games. Like a substantial section of toy stores nowadays are kind of pre-5 toys and then video games.
Yeah.
They're like two aisles of Lego, and because it's all IP, and then a tiny amount of kind of what you would traditionally go to a toy store to look at, the strange collection of toys.
Yeah, but that's also, Canada still has Toys R Us. Actually, is still sort of alive, but in America, it's like, imagine, I can't even think of an analogy. It's like, well, I know analogy. Like a lot of places are losing their movie theaters. Like if you lose a movie theater in your town, you have a small town. Well, there's nowhere to see a movie now. It's like, oh, where are you going to see a movie? You can't. It's not like, oh, we'll just go. Like, no, it doesn't exist. Or like, your favorite restaurant closes. How about that? Always sucks. Like, okay, where am I going to get there used to be a place here in Manhattan called oh my God, they were so ahead of their time. This was in the 90s. They're called Royal Canadian Pancake House. And they would serve you, if you got their French toast, it was like a loaf of bread cut in half. And there was like 2 pieces of like half a loaf of bread. And then the pancakes were 10 pounds. And they were like this big. They would serve you the lumberjack pancakes. And they had, the food was excellent. It was the biggest, craziest food you've ever seen. But it was before TikTok. It was before social media. Yep. And they went out of business right before that. I was like, if they were still, they would have been the place to go. Like, the place. Because everything was great. And when they went out of business, it's like, well, where do you go for that? You don't. It doesn't exist. It's like, no one does that. It's not like you could just find it. Well, we got on a really weird tangent. Anyhow, the tangent is that
it's what always happens.
Well, no, the tangent is that everything they need to control. The tangent was that because of that, they realized we need to control every aspect of the business, including the distribution, which they're doing. Like, it's like we are controlling the book printing, we are controlling the book selling. Like, they don't even use Penguin anymore; they do it themselves. Yep. So they distribute their own books to the stores. Now they want everyone to go on to theirs. Like, they want to control every aspect. And by the way, everyone's doing this. All these companies are doing this.
I'm astonished that we haven't seen them do something in regards to changing how they print their books, given how many errors and delays and recalls they've had with the 5th edition books in the last couple of years. I feel like every release has either been delayed, had like physical production errors, or has had some kind of problem related to that. It feels like if they're still using the same people, surely you should be looking to change.
Lego didn't fail by trying to do this. Lego actually almost did fail by trying to do everything themselves, but they got saved by co-branding and video games. That's what saved them was Harry Potter. Seriously, like Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, like making Legos based on Star Wars and Harry Potter,
which is 100% what D&D wants to do.
Oh God, yeah.
Like when you look at the D&D Direct video and see Optimus Prime standing in Sigil, like that's 100% what they want to do.
Yeah, but they own that. That's their own property. That's the thing. Oh yeah, they're definitely doing that. It's not a question. I mean, they already showed it. It's like,
and I think that we will probably see more of that going forward. I think it will be a couple of years before we see certainly a D&D Beyond exclusive adventure or something that involves another Hasbro IP that isn't D&D or Magic that has an adventure that is D&D Beyond exclusive.
We actually did talk about how to create D&D adventures easily and quickly a while ago. That was the thing. Base it off movies and TV. There you go. There's your quick adventure. Like take
2 movies, do the fusion dance with them, figure out what to do with what comes out as a result of that, and you'll have a weird Cronenberg adventure that will be hideous amounts of fun.
Yeah, no, it's like the easiest way, either A, buy a side quest, and there you have some quick adventures, easy. Or you just take something you literally know already and kind of just rewrite it. And the best part is you can do it in your head on the fly, because if you know it already pretty well, you can just make it up as you go along. So there we go.
I ran the entirety of Hot Fuzz for my players once. It was one of the best sessions we ever had.
Oh, really? But what happens if you're like me, who sees every movie and knows Hot Fuzz inside?
Oh no,
out?
They knew Hot Fuzz. They got it instantly, and that made it better.
Oh, even more fun. Okay.
They knew the references. They totally bought in on it straight away. They knew the part that their characters were expected to play, and fully bought in and went along for it.
I see. Oh, 15 minutes and 2 hours. Well, have you seen the show? It's hard to talk about one topic for that long. I mean, we could, but then it would be a 15-minute show.
I did bring us to it, though, right?
Yeah, eventually.
I did, and we talked a little bit about it. There is actually an episode, and I'm serious about this. The one that Steven mentioned about the tips from
we did it twice.
Film, that was pretty on topic. Actually, we didn't stray that off topic during that episode.
No,
not a lot of people watched it, but I recommend it.
Yeah, that's my best. I think it's my best show. Well,
my dad sometimes watches our shows and he doesn't understand them at all because he doesn't even play. But he was like, I understood that one because I watch movies and I knew which movie Steven was talking about.
Yeah, well, that one, I go into the whole philosophy because of the way scripts are written, and it's incredibly structured, and I explain why they're just designed that way. And so when Hollywood reads them, they have to be able to flip to specific pages to see specific beats, because if you're a Hollywood screenwriter and you work in Hollywood, they're not going to read a 120 140 page script, so they'll only read 5 pages, and so you have to have specific things, specific pages. That's why they also get rewritten, and if that way they can read it, they can literally just say they can read page 1, 30, 60, 80, 100, 100, they can just read those pages and literally get the whole story, and it's designed on purpose that way. So it's a whole thing. Anyhow,
picking up a book on script writing or developing your craft in relation to script writing will just make you a better adventure writer, because most, certainly published adventures, they are very akin to the kind of process of writing a script. You are delivering a bunch of information very much like a script, and someone is going to run it very much like a director is going to run the set of a film or a TV show using that script as their guiding force.
Okay, so we'll ask you, Anto, and then could probably wrap up. So I have a theory that people make fun of me for, but it's true, that almost every single movie is a heist. If you think about it, every movie, every one. And the reason is because a heist is usually that a character is trying to get something from someone else. through, either behind their back or without them knowing, or and if you think about it, almost every movie has heist elements to it. This actually came because people were asking, why is D&D a heist movie? And I was, that's actually where it came from, way back when, like years ago. I'm like, well, all movies are heist movies. They're like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, think about it. And then we went through the list. I'm like, holy crap, you're kind of right. They actually are.
I think I could probably pull up a list of every film I'd ever seen and tangle it into a heist movie somehow. So I probably agree with you on like a very high level.
Well, at a high level, at a high level, I actually did finally find. I actually was able to break my own rule that I did find a genre that's not really a heist movie. I finally found it. Or there's sometimes reverse heists, like Lord of the Rings is kind of a reverse heist. That's like getting the ring to Sauron. I'm like, it's a heist, man. They're trying to sneak it in. I'm like, that's a heist, and they have and it's like, that's such a heist. They have a gang. They each have their own abilities. Like, that is so Ocean's 11, like,
put the Ocean's 11 like split screen effect and the music behind it.
I know
it would be the same.
Exactly. I'm like, it's like, no, like, this is not a heist. I'm like, totally a heist. It's like, it is. In fact, it is. They're literally putting together the team. It's like, that is a freaking heist movie in every way, shape, and form. And then they have to sneak in, but not to steal something, but to destroy something. But it's a heist. So, Coen Brothers, so some movies aren't Coen Brothers sometimes, but actually I think I finally figured it out. I think traditional horror slasher movies, they're not really heists. Like a Friday the 13th or Halloween type. I was like, yeah, not really.
I mean, though, kind of.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of things that I say aren't heists when you said they're heists, but they kind of are.
Okay.
A little bit.
Okay.
The one's not where the slasher wins, but where they eventually beat them and figure it out. Because the heist in this case is escape with your life rather than escaping with the heist is the
life. Yeah. Right.
You escape with your life, or even try to fight and beat them back, or send Freddy back into the nightmare realm, or whatever you need to do. And the complications where the plan goes wrong are that he's usually more invincible than you think, or he hops out and kills somebody that was supposed to be part of the plan.
Yep.
And so you have to figure out how to deal with things around the way. So weirdly, like, it's not a perfect analogy, but some of the things that you've said are a heist, I think, are more of a stretch than the slasher movies.
A lot of slasher films involve some level of planning. A lot of them involve some kind of detailed plan, or setting traps, or like some kind of mechanical element to the third act where they're like, right, we've got to set a trap or do some kind of surprise for the slasher. There's a lot of shared DNA between slashers and heists. I think, stick a different soundtrack under something like Home Alone and you've got a slasher, and that Home Alone's a heist movie.
That's a heist movie. That literally is a heist movie.
But put a different soundtrack under it and Kevin is a slasher villain.
Oh yeah. But that is a heist because they're trying to sneak in to take to rob the house. I mean, it's like you couldn't be more of a heist. But it's just funny because I came to the conclusion by accident, and then I was thinking about. Whenever I see a movie, I'm always thinking, is this a heist? And I'm thinking, how is it? I'm like, yeah, it is. And I actually just saw Trap, which was really interesting and good. That was the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and that is a heist of a heist of a heist, because it's I'm not giving anything away, but it starts off that they're going to a concert, and you find this out in the first 5 minutes, is that they're going to a concert. It's a dad with his daughter, and it's like, a Taylor Swift type concert, and there's very few dads there, maybe 1,000 dads, and the cops find out that there's a serial killer called the Butcher who's going to be at the concert. So they set up a sting to basically block all the exits and to interview every man, male there, because there's not that many, and they know he's going to be there. And then the guy looks around, he realizes it, and he's the Butcher. And then he's like, okay, I got to get out. And how does he get out? And I will say, I have seen a trillion movies, and I had no idea, and this is so rare, man. This happens to me maybe once or twice a year. I had no idea what was going to happen in this movie, and I can tell you what's going to happen in any movie. I was like, I have no idea where this movie is going. I have no idea what it's going to do. I have no idea how he's going to get out of this. And I was like, this is fascinating. I was like, it was very good. And the guy who played him was really good, because 1 second he's a loving dad and another second he's a psychopath who will kill you. I was like, damn, man. But there we go. That's a heist. And he's trying to get out. It's a reverse heist. He's like, okay, I got to get out of this place. And it's literally cat and mouse with two very smart people. So, yeah. Anyhow, if you want to see a good movie, I would recommend that one. I saw it with my son. He was like, damn. It's like, that movie was crazy. I'm like, yeah, it was. That was a good movie. Not a spoiler at all. Yeah, I'm trying to think if anything else was not a heist. Java is everything is an object type of philosophy. Everything is an object, though. That's the thing. Everything's an object in Java. Everything's an object. Well, I always say, because I'm a programmer, my team always makes fun of me because I'm like, everything is an if-then statement. Everything. But it really is, because all circuits are if-then statements, and everything's made of circuits. So, and they're just variations of if-then statements. So yes, everything in this world is an if-then statement, or an if-then else
Don't you
statement.
need two things for it to be an if-then statement, though?
It's an if-then else statement.
You need an X and a Y, and then if it's X or not Y, then it's an if-then statement automatically, because that's sort of the formal logical definition of an if-then, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're saying if it rains, then there must have been clouds, then that means rain, or sorry, I did it in the opposite direction, but you see what I mean.
Yeah.
It means clouds or not rain.
So so to recap, everything's a heist, everything's an if-then statement. We need one more. Oh, and everything's an object. There you go. That will get you through life.
And everything comes in a rule of threes.
Well, that's the other one. Everything does come in the rule of threes. That's actually from Design 101. I taught a design class, and you need to do something in a pattern of three for your brain to make a pattern of it. Because
another classic script writing tool as well.
Yeah, it's also script. Yeah, that's a very classic script writing tool. And then you can break it by saying, you go to a pattern of like 3 or 4, or then you break it after the 4th, and then people are like, what? Then it breaks their brain and hurts them, and you can use that against them. That's why Dan Harmon, someone mentioned Dan Harmon, that's why Dan Harmon is so brilliant, because he knows all the rules, and then he subverts them, so that's why his stuff seems like you're a genius, because you're like, oh, he subverted this rule that we all know, and I got it, and no one else did. I'm like, no, everyone else got it too. I hate to break it to you. You're not a genius. He's a genius. You're not the genius. Because Dan Harmon did a whole thing. I don't know if you saw that on Rick and Morty. He did an entire episode on Everything's a Heist. I was like, yes! I was like, I have been justified! And then he's like, how heists don't make any sense. Well, he brought it to the conclusion of insanity, of heists within heists within heists within heists. It's like, okay, come on, man. It was really good. So anyhow, do you have heists in your adventures? Are all your adventures heists?
Not all of them, but I know at least one adventure in one of the 3 annuals is a heist.
Well, there you go.
Possibly more. My brain is no longer working, but there's at least one heist. And I have run several heists in my campaigns through the years. Fairly recently, we had an enormous heist.
Well, it doesn't have to be a heist in the traditional sense that you have to do subterfuge and do all the dress up and stuff like that. It's a heist in the sense that you have to find an object and get past people, and steal it. That's the heist. So.
That's in that sense, yes. Everything is a heist.
Oh, so why are heists hard to run in D&D? Because heists only work very well written in third person, and you can't do third person in D&D. You can only really do first person. So it's impossible. How do you give people information that they should know as an audience without telling their characters? And that's why heists work, because in movies, the characters you're watching don't have the information, but you as the viewer do have the information. So
I think that heists are one of the types of adventure that are really, really enhanced by playing on a VTT versus playing in person. Especially if you are implementing fog of war, vision, and light. In the heist that I recently ran, we were playing in Foundry. We have all of those things enabled, and I had the guards in the heist scenario, and I was controlling them, and I had them patrolling, and that element of them dynamically patrolling meant that both the characters and the players could see them moving in real time. So anytime that they would stop and dally and start, bogging down and get into the slog that is inherent in heists, the tokens would just start moving and it would force action. And it was just one of the little parts of playing in a VTT that I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to say the guards are moving now. They just saw the tokens start moving and they freaked out, as the characters would and as the players would naturally do as well. And it was a great use of VTT to get something that I don't think would have had the same effect in an in-person game.
And by the way, they said, why are heists so hard to run? The other thing, and to say heists have a wee bit of time travel too. Yeah, in fact, if you watch, was it Blades in the Dark, the way they do heists is that you can go back in time and set something.
You can just do your flashback scene.
Right, you do a flashback.
A lot of heist systems have that.
Right.
Leverage RPG too.
Well, I was going to say, movies, in fact, you can do from the movie Frequency. There's this thing. Basically he's talking to someone in the past, like 25 years in the past, and he's literally being attacked by someone, and he's like, okay, this is what I need you to do. I need you to leave a gun in the wall now, and so 25 years in the future I can punch a hole and get the gun. And then it happens. He literally punches the hole, pulls it out, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. They're literally going back in time to tell what to do in the future. And Bill and Ted, they did the same thing. Remember, it's like, oh, Bill, don't forget, we got to go back in time, and when we're back in time, we got to get a garbage can so we could drop it on this guy, and then a garbage can comes down. I'm like, genius. So that's how you run a heist in D&D. Run it the Bill and Ted way. You have to have a way for your players to say, oh, wait, I counter it by doing this. So heists are very hard. I actually just ran a heist recently. They're very, very hard to run successfully. So because you have to give them just enough information that or what I do, actually, and then we could end. I ran a heist, a casino heist, actually very successfully. And the way we did it is I gave them all the information. Actually, this I got from Deep Space Nine. Do you remember they did a casino heist in Deep Space Nine? And it was like season 7.
It was on the holodeck.
It was a holodeck, and it was one of the best episodes ever, because they go through and they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they actually show the heist from beginning to end of how it will be perfect. And they go through it. And then when they do the heist, nothing goes right. Yep. Like everything messes up. And that's exactly what we did. Is I told them, okay, this is what's going to happen. And they had it all planned out. And they show up, and nothing but the plan. And then they had to improvise very quickly.
Classic heist trope in film and TV. Play through the whole heist, and then the actual real run, everything starts going wrong.
Yeah. Well, that one I like because it's a very tight show, and it was done so well. And it was a casino heist, which I love. I love casino heists because casino heists are so. There's something about a casino heist because there's so many. You have to distract the guards, and you have to sneak into the area. You got to get the chips. Like there's all these and everyone kind of knows it. It's like, okay, I kind of know the steps because they're all the same. It's always the same steps,
Yeah, that's a big element of running something as complex as a heist. Is the more that you can put your players into that familiar aspect where they have a lot of assumed knowledge and they know the beats and they know the tropes. You don't have to explain as much to them. You don't have to get them to work as hard to get into the kind of headspace for it. which means that you can just hit the ground running much easier.
Okay. Might have to change the title of this this video. It's to Why Every Adventure is a Heist. There we go.
Yep.
Well, no, why is everything in life a heist? There. Even more appropriate.
Always heisting.
Everything's a heist. Everything. Your whole life is a heist because you're always looking to get the angle. You're always trying to get something.
Why is everything a heist? Picture of both of our Kickstarters.
Oh, sure. And that actually, yeah. I don't know if the Kickstarter is a heist, but I guess it could be. Could be. So, all right. When is your Kickstarter? It started and it ends.
It is. It's started already. It is running until the 10th of October.
Oh, okay. Oh, I just saw some people pledge. Look at that. And you have a very realistic goal. It's like almost too low. People did say you should make a tier where you get your... Oh, you do have here where you get the past... Oh, you have them as add-ons.
Yeah. So you can pick up the previous books as add-ons, both physically and in PDF. If you pledge before 2 p.m. UK time on the 12th, which is tomorrow for me, you can pick up the third annual a slight early bird discount. And if and when we unlock the stretch goal that gets the special edition cover, you can keep that discount grandfathered in through the pledge manager as well, so you don't lose access to that.
Got it.
The goal is intentionally low and achievable, but like I said, kind of up top, all the stretch goals are super achievable as well. Like it's not, I'm not expecting us to do like 50, 100 grand. It's all stuff that's achievable, manageable. I expect the book to deliver on time and for everyone to get their stuff and to just have the product that they expect.
Okay. Well, ours is big. And I think I finally have like we're getting the last pieces of art for the monsters. I have only like 5.
It's always exciting.
Yeah, well, one of them though has to do with like time travel and all this. Like, it's a family of monsters, and I keep giving it to people, and no one wants to do it because it's so weird. It's all like, oh, that's too hard.
Platinum's the parallel present and the
no, that one's already done.
So which one is the time travel one?
It's
that's a family, and they're all time travel.
That one was easy. No, this is the one where it's a limited projection of a tetrahedron. It was like a tetrahedron creature. The Fratrix.
Oh yeah, so those aren't time travel. They are like weird, random, mathy stuff. Like one of them is Zeno's paradox, where you can never actually reach the end of a hallway because if you go half and
how the hell do you depict that?
What?
How the hell do you depict that as a monster?
It's very difficult.
Yeah, I know. No one wants to do it.
How do you write the rules for Zeno's paradox? Was already hard. It's actually hilarious. So the way it works is it has 128 hit points, and no one attack can drop it below 64. And then once it's below 64, no one attack can drop it below 32. And it's at a level where you
really like that.
It's at a level where you would normally have way more than 128 hit points. But and then once it's at 1 hit point, because of Zeno's paradox saying you never reach there, it remains at 1 until it runs out of its reactions to do so. And then at that point, you can defeat it. So
right, I'm trying to illustrate the 4th dimension.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And there's another one in that family that's like an illustration of chaos theory. If a butterfly flaps its wings in China, will it influence the weather in the UK or something like that? And that is also difficult to illustrate. Yeah. And then the one Steven said.
In the place of where you should have the art, just a box of text of a rant of how difficult it would be to depict this creature. And just, the rant doesn't even finish. It just runs off the page.
Well, the problem is actually, I know why, because the reason it's a problem is that it's a mathematical equation and it has to be very exact. And most of my artists, they're freehand. Okay, here's the one. Not that I want to use AI, but almost all my artists use freehand. So very exact things like this are a nightmare for them to render because they're not good at making things straight and level and mathematical. So I almost have to find someone specializing in this type of art.
Someone that's more used to working in sort of
3D
vector.
Vector. Right. I need like kind of a vector.
Grid-based work.
Yeah. And almost none of my guys do that. Actually, I don't look at any of them. Hypercube. That is a terrible movie, by the way. Cube, great movie. I've seen all the sequels. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Terrible. You like movies, don't you? You seem like the type of person who I do
enjoy movies.
Okay. I think I'm going to have Jack Packard on the show, Mark, and he and I are just going to talk movies for 2 hours. You don't have to go to that.
That'd be awesome.
I know. For me and him.
For you.
I know. For us, it'll be
I'll
great.
have seen one of them eventually.
Well, I had a meeting with him, and half of the meeting was him and I talking about movies that we just saw. That was literally because he sees everything, and so do I. I was like, oh! And we're talking about like Maxine, and we're talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, and we're just going about every single movie. So like, oh, you see this, and then we're like comparing. It's great. I think that would actually, I could do that as a side tangent of. I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to do a different show just on watching movies and just talk about movies. But you need a hook because there's 10 trillion. The thing is, there's 10 trillion YouTube channels that talk about movies, and I love all of them.
Yeah.
I was like, I like watching them all. I like every one. It's like I never can get enough. It's a very interesting topic. It's like because you've seen
a hot new film comes out and you're like, right, time to go and watch my 12 YouTube videos that are all talking about this film, and we'll all say like broadly the same thing.
I know. Well, that's the thing.
Every minute of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. They're all talking about the same thing and the same movies, and you're like, yeah, I know every single one of these, and I can't stop watching them. So anyhow, well, do check out Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm, which is ours is live a little bit longer. We actually went 36 days instead of the traditional 30. That was just because we had ads that were going over 5 weeks. So
Oh, I was wondering why. So
yeah.
I'm glad to know why for my random information.
Well, it's hard to coordinate ads over like just a month. And so we have some ads that are going into next month. So I'm like, well, there you go.
Oh, there you go. Well, I mean, the last one just stayed open and had late pledges being allowed, although like not that many. I think only like 50 people backed it late or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, are we doing a PHB, a player's handbook? I do need to do that, but it's so late, and I would have done it throughout the whole thing. I didn't see Beetlejuice yet, though. I gotta see.
Well, maybe that'll be good for the people who waited till the end. They have a much higher chance of winning.
No, I had to do it throughout the whole time. They all have to like say why they wanted it.
Oh, I see. See, if you'd been a little bit sooner, you could have given it to Anto because he didn't have his yet. I saw him saying in a comment, like, it's weird that I would be more likely to get it from Roll for Combat than from actually Wizards of the Coast.
I've got it on D&D Beyond, but I still don't have a physical copy because Wizards don't answer my emails.
They don't answer anyone's emails. Although, good luck. You can't get it's very hard to get one. Now people are saying it. Well, I'll do another show. Maybe I'll do one tomorrow, Friday. I'll do a different one, and I'll start it from the very, very, very beginning. I actually totally forgot to do it for today. That's kind of the problem. And also, how many do I have left? I have 3. Okay, I have 3 left, so I still have some. Was a comment from last week picked this week? No, actually, so let me do that. I will do the comment from last week. How about that? So if you commented on the video last week, you might still be doing it. Although you don't have to be here to win that. So here we go. Let me see. Doing the rolls. Give me 1 second. Oh, that was the Shadow Dark one. Let's see how many comments that we have on Shadow Dark.
While Steven's doing that, everyone should go and check out Battlezoo Bestiary because it's going absolute bonanzas.
It kind of is. We have so many
$1,000 at the minute. It's
what? Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
We have almost 1,500 backers, which the last one closed with 1478, I think, which is fewer than the number of people who are backing it right now.
Okay, I got the winner. The winner is Chad Kirkendall. Chad Kirkendall. And his thing is Chad Kirkendall 8520. And he is a member. He's subscribed. I think he liked it. And he said he put his hat in the ring to give away a player's handbook. I would give it to my daughter's D&D middle school group. There you go.
Oh, nice.
That's nice. So if you're listening, Chad, just write me contact@rollforcombat.com. I actually am getting I'm like living at the post office. It's like every day I just keep going there. I'm getting good at it. I'm getting good at sending these books though. I like have them all wrapped up and everything. So Chad, you won from the comments. So I do both. You leave a comment and then I pick someone. And then also I do sometimes live. I kind of forgot today, but I'll do it again. I promise. Maybe I'll do a live one like tomorrow or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But how about that? Chad, you won. Chad Kirk and all. Kirk and all. I'm saying it phonetically. It's literally Kirk and all. So there we go. And that's awfully nice. I will have a funny story. Want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, let's hear it.
My son went to Rochester this weekend, which is kind of a geeky school, but it is what it is. It's a very much like a MIT, Carnegie Mellon type school. And so my son went there and he was visiting it and he was talking to the guy who was the kid's freshman. And he's like, what do you guys do around here for fun? Because it is in Rochester, which is cold and kind of the middle of nowhere. It's not like a very big town, and it seems like not like a super fun city compared to some of the other ones. And he's like, oh, well, I'm in a fencing club, and I play D&D. And then I'm like, oh, did you tell him? And both my son and my wife were like, no. I'm like, oh, come on. You could have said who I was. They're like, no, we refuse to tell him. I'm like, come on. They never, ever tell. In fact, one of my son's teachers runs D&D, and he wouldn't tell him. And I was like, really? And then when a teacher-parent conference night, I brought him some books. So I was like, he was very happy.
Amazing.
I was like, but then they're like, here's the part, shows you how different my kids are from me. They're like, yeah, I don't know if I can go there now. They play D&D. I'm like, really? It's like, they're so not into this type of gaming. Anyhow, it just shows.
That is very, very sad.
I know.
It's like, oh man, there's someone in the entire college who plays D&D. That's it. That was the question.
Well, they're like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of geeky.
Do enough with this at home. God damn.
I know. It's like, kind of geeky. I don't know if we can go here. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? Come on. First it was one kid. I'm like, what do you think you do in college? Maybe you'll like it. But yet, you know what? They're heavy. I told you what they're into, and they discuss it all day, all night, is chorus. Chorus. World choral competition. That's all he does, is he goes around the world singing chorus. And I'm like, I don't know, kind of geeky. Although he just got invited to China. He's going to China for 2 weeks to sing. The government of China invited him. Not him, but his whole chorus. And they're all going to China. Ugh. He said to me, my son, he sings in chorus, and so it's the number one like chorus in the world. It's not like a small thing. So he goes around the world, and he's like, Dad, in 11 months I've been to 5 continents. And I was like, that's nice, Adam. Like, nice for you. He's like, I only got if we can get to Antarctica there. I'm like, all right, calm down, buddy. No, because he's just like, we went to South America, we've been to America. He went to New Zealand, he went to Australia, he went to Japan, and now he's going to China, and he's went to Europe. I was like, come on, stop it. So we play D&D, and we sit at home. And
people play TTRPGs in Antarctica. So that's an additional
I do know
content.
that. I
actually heard from someone who went there to one of the research facilities and they're playing Starfinder.
I saw that.
That's cool.
Well, because that was on that was the thing for Starfinder Society, because it was like I remember you guys writing a blog post about how it's been played in every continent, including Antarctica now. So, but have you done outer?
I think I told the other people at Paizo maybe, and then they put it in there about.
It was I read that. It was, but have you done outer space?
Yeah, that's the real question. We need to get someone to play it on the space station.
Yeah,
obviously, because I think outer space no, but Antarctica yes. Because what else are they gonna do when they're in Antarctica, right?
Seriously, it's like, what do you do if you're in Antarctica or jail? There you go. You play D&D.
That's the only crossover.
Well, or a geeky school, geeky college, jail. Like, oh god. I always tell people when I played D&D, it was so long ago that it was the Dragons and Dungeons Club. It was instead of Dungeons and Dragons. They didn't even know what it was, and I always look at that, and I always shake my head. I'm like, they didn't even get the name right. Come on, man. Oh, how do you handle dice in 0G? You use either a digital dice roller or it's the spinner. That new one I've seen a lot of people are doing. There's the spinner. That will work too. So, although, that would be interesting. How would you do it if you wanted to use real dice in 0G? I guess you'd have to use a spinner.
Time.
Yeah.
There is a super chat from Agile Monk, who's one of my patrons, who says it's about time you had me on the show. It's not their fault.
You've been on the
It's
show
my
a
fault.
lot.
I've been on before, and it always happens on the same night as I play D&D.
Agile Monk is everywhere, by the way.
Yeah, very agile.
Monk, yeah, you are agile. Like, I didn't know that. You're like, Anto chooses like everywhere I go, he's there. I was like, he's aptly named. So, throw a metal dice at a plate. Oh yeah, maybe if they're magnetic. So you make them like a little bit of a magnet, not too magnetic, just a little magnetic, so it can roll and then stick. There you go. There we go. Get on it.
Used to play with magnets.
Well, yeah. Well, that'd be funny. It's like, can we do a Kickstarter for 0G dice? I don't know if that would work. So
Stretch goal.
Stretch goal. Yeah, that's a stretch. All right, we're going all too long. My dog's hungry. Ow, Mark, you can say the thing.
Okay, I mean, if you want me to, I will.
No, it's been
until next time. If you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.